And that's where Dietrich Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity comes in. Or in my own translation of his letters and papers from prison, where we find this, he uses the word folly instead of stupidity. It gets translated different ways, willful ignorance, that sort of thing. But Bonhoeffer was a Lutheran pastor in Germany in the years leading up to and including World War II. And he was one of the founders of the Confessing Church. As we know from history, most German Christians fell right in line with the Hitler regime. But Bonhoeffer was part of a small remnant of German Christians who didn't bend the knee. And eventually he was imprisoned and executed for his active resistance to the regime. So he wrote this particular letter in 1943 from Tegel prison. And I think a lot of us will relate to the pain and the frustration that just kind of comes through in these words. And so he begins this way: folly, or as some people translate it, stupidity, is a more dangerous enemy to the good than malice. You can protest against malice. You can unmask it or prevent it by force. Malice always contains the seeds of its own destruction, for it always makes men uncomfortable, if nothing worse. But there is no defense against folly. Neither protest nor force are of any avail against it, and it's never amenable to reason. And so if we only stopped at that point, we might think that he's just complaining that people are too stupid to understand what they're witnessing. You know, we can protest obvious evil, but we can't protest against folly because the very people that we're protesting won't understand why we're protesting them because they're foolish. But that's not what he's saying, really, that people are too stupid to understand. He's not saying that, and we'll see that as he goes on. If facts contradict personal prejudices, he writes, there's no need to believe them if they're undeniable. They can simply be pushed aside as exceptions. So you see what he's saying? It's not that these people that he's describing, and again, he's writing in the context of German Christians who overwhelmingly supported Hitler. He's not saying that they're not smart enough to understand the things that they're witnessing. He's saying that the facts contradict their personal prejudices, so they push them aside as exceptions. You know, and today we might say ICE officers aren't terrorizing the Twin Cities. Gregory Bovino himself is telling us that 95% of Minnesotans approve of what he's doing in our state. And those people on the streets are the exception. They're radicals. And even if a woman got shot in the head by an ICE agent, he was defending himself. And pay no attention to the hundreds of videos of people being wrongly detained and abused by federal agents. You know, just let Kristi Noem and Tricia McLaughlin assure you that they all had it coming. And despite the evidence of your own eyes, everything that's happening is good and it's right and it's just. I mean, that's kind of what I'm hearing from a lot of people. And I have to tell you, we're to the point now, well, I think we got to this point 10 years ago for a lot of us, but we're to the point for sure now that the evidence of our own eyes about Trump and his agenda is just so obvious. So it takes a conscious choice to ignore that evidence. And so Bonhoeffer goes on and says, thus the fool, as compared with the scoundrel, is invariably self-complacent, and he can easily become dangerous, for it does not take much to make him aggressive. Hence, folly requires much more cautious handling than malice. We shall never again try to reason with the fool, for it is both useless and dangerous, these things. And Bonhoeffer says it this way. He says, to deal adequately with folly, it's essential to recognize it for what it is. And this much is certain. It is a moral rather than an intellectual defect. There are men of great intellect who are fools, and men of low intellect who are anything but fools. And that's the core of the issue. Folly or stupidity or willful ignorance or whatever you want to call it, that's a moral problem, not an intellectual one in the way that Bonhoeffer's talking about it. And so I'll leave it to you, if you want to read the rest of what Bonhoeffer says about it. You can find his letters from prison, letters and papers from prison, a lot of different places. And you can find this excerpt a lot of different places if you search for it. But it's important to know where he goes with all of this, because he writes, once he has surrendered his will and become a mere tool, there are no lengths of evil to which the fool will not go. Yet all the time he's unable to see that it's evil. And here lies the danger of a diabolical exploitation of humanity, which can do irreparable damage to the human character. But it is just at this point that we realize that the fool cannot be saved by education. What he needs is redemption. There is nothing else for it. And so for myself, as somebody who talks about this stuff online, it's right here that I think the rubber hits the road. And I have to ask myself, is it any good to say these things? I mean, if people aren't going to be persuaded by argument, then why have the argument, So here's what I'll say to that. First of all, just speaking as a Christian, I do believe in the power of the Holy Spirit to regenerate us and to lead us into increasingly deeper understanding. And I don't believe any of us are ever going to see everything clearly, perfectly clearly, but we can pray for the eyes of our own hearts to be opened, but also for others as well, starting with us, though. But whether we're coming at this from a Christian perspective or not, I think anyone who studies these sorts of issues about how people change, how people get to a better place in their character or their understanding, I think that most people would tell you it rarely happens by somebody arguing them into a better place. It comes from extended relationships of love. And so when I say the things that I'm saying about Trump's supporters, like I said, I know it sounds mean sometimes, and I know that sometimes I am angry, and right now I'm angry about what's happening in my city. But what I'm ultimately trying to do is I'm first of all trying to understand what's going on. What's going on at the core of everything that we're seeing. And I'm trying to help other people to understand if I learn anything. And so if we learn anything helpful along the way, I hope that we're able to apply it with humility to our own lives and relationships. Because as tempting as it is sometimes, it really just isn't helpful to call people dumb. But if we recognize that we're all conflicted in different ways, we have conflicting desires. We're all afflicted with some sort of corrupt desires, I think. I'll speak for myself. I'm not going to put it on you if you don't accept that, but that's where I'm coming from. And if we understand that, then maybe we can talk with our loved ones and our friends with enough humility that we can make it not about their politics, as much as that seems so important right now. And it's almost all I talk about online. It's not all I talk about in real life, So if we have enough humility, then, like I say, we can make it not about their politics, but about our shared struggle to develop a better character and to become a little more helpful to the world every year that we live. And like I said, I fall short of this every day, but I keep on trying. And as I work out my own stuff in public, thanks for listening.